The sound of the clock ticking on the kitchen wall never bothered me before. It was a quiet rhythm, a background noise that faded into the hum of everyday life. But tonight, it was deafening. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I sat at the dinner table, staring at the untouched plate of food in front of me. The fork in my hand felt heavy, as if the weight of my entire marriage rested in its dull, silver prongs. Across from me, Marlene laughed softly at something on her phone. Her eyes sparkled under the dim kitchen light, and for a moment, she looked just like she did 30 years ago, young, carefree, mine. But she wasn't. Not anymore. The glow from her screen reflected off her face, and for the first time in my life, I noticed something I had ignored for far too long. The way she smirked at a message. The way her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing something quickly. The way she immediately flipped the phone over, as if even its presence on the table was a danger. Something was wrong. I cleared my throat. "Who's that?" Marlene looked up, her expression too neutral, too practiced. "Oh, just a work thing," she said, reaching for her wine glass. She took a sip, never breaking eye contact. I had always admired how effortlessly she could command a room, how she could hold a conversation without revealing a single thing she didn't want to. But at this moment, that skill, the one I once found charming, felt like a knife in my chest. "Late night work chat?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She shrugged, swirling the wine in her glass. "You know how it is." But I didn't. Not anymore. For 30 years, I believed in us. I trusted in the life we built. I never thought to question what was hidden in the late nights, the extra hours, the business trips that seemed a little too frequent. Until now. I set my fork down carefully, pressing my palms against the cool wood of the table. My heart pounded, a steady, relentless beat that matched the ticking of the clock. Tick, tock. It was happening, wasn't it? The thing you read about in books, hear about from devastated friends, never imagine happening to you. A lie, sitting right in front of me. I swallowed hard. "Hand me your phone." Marlene froze. Just for a split second. A tiny pause, so small, so insignificant that an outsider wouldn't have noticed it. But I did. Because 30 years teaches you a lot about a person. She let out a breathy laugh. "Don't be ridiculous, Elliot." Ridiculous. I felt my fingers curl into a fist on the table. That single word did more damage than she could ever imagine. Because in it, I heard everything, the dismissal, the condescension, the subtle mockery that told me I was a fool for even asking. But I wasn't a fool. Not anymore. The truth was right there, just out of reach. I didn't have to see the messages to know. I already knew. Marlene took another sip of wine, her fingers tapping gently against the glass. Waiting. Testing me. I took a slow breath and pushed my chair back, the wooden legs scraping against the floor. She arched an eyebrow. "Where are you going?" I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. "To think." And as I walked toward the door, the sound of the clock ticking followed me out. Tick, tock. 30 years together. 30 seconds to end it. The night air hit me like a slap the moment I stepped outside. It was cooler than I expected, the kind of cold that seeps under your skin, settling into your bones. I barely noticed. My thoughts were too loud, a chaotic storm of memories and questions swirling in my mind. How long? How many times? Was it someone I knew? The weight of 30 years of marriage pressed down on me as I stood in the driveway, staring at the darkened street. I felt like a fool. I felt played. But more than anything, I felt empty. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers hovering over the screen. Should I call someone? A friend? My brother? But what would I say? "Hey, I think my wife of 3 decades has been lying to me." The words sounded ridiculous even in my head. Instead, I unlocked my phone and did the one thing I never thought I'd have to do. I opened up her social media. Marlene was careful. She always had been. There were no suspicious posts, no cryptic messages or hidden confessions. Just the usual, the vacation photos, the anniversary posts, the smiling pictures of us at dinner parties. A perfectly curated life. A life I thought was real. But I knew better now. I scrolled mindlessly, looking for something, anything that could tell me what I already knew in my gut. That's when I saw it. A comment, buried beneath dozens of others, under a photo from one of her business trips. "Looks like a great time. Wish I could have joined." It was from a name I didn't recognize, Daniel Westcott. The kind of name that sounded vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place where from. The comment wasn't anything special, just a simple, friendly remark. But the moment I saw it, something clicked in my brain. I tapped on his profile. No pictures of a wife or family. No signs of a long-term relationship. Just a man, maybe in his early 50s, with a carefully polished online presence. A man who traveled often. A man who had liked nearly every single one of Marlene's pictures going back years. I exhaled sharply, my grip on the phone tightening. Was this him? Was this the guy? I didn't realize how much time had passed until I heard the front door creak open behind me. I didn't turn around, but I could feel Marlene standing there, watching me. "You're being dramatic," she said finally, her voice clipped. I let out a breathless laugh, shaking my head. "That's what you have to say?" She sighed, stepping closer. "Elliot, come inside. Let's talk." I turned to face her, studying the woman I had loved for most of my life. The woman who had stood beside me through every milestone, every hardship. The woman who was now standing in our doorway, looking at me not with guilt, not with regret, but with annoyance. I had spent 3 decades believing I knew her. But in this moment, she felt like a stranger. I shoved my phone back into my pocket. "Are you going to lie to my face?" Her eyes flickered, just for a second. And there it was again, that hesitation. That tiny pause before she composed herself, before she smoothed over her expression like she had done 1,000 times before. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said evenly. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I wasn't a fool, and I wasn't going to let her treat me like one. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. "Daniel Westcott," I said, watching her face carefully. She didn't react right away, but I saw it. The way her shoulders tensed, the way her breath caught just slightly. "Who?" she asked, feigning confusion. I pulled out my phone again, scrolling to the photo with his comment and holding it up to her face. "This guy," I said, my voice calmer than I felt. "The one who seems to really enjoy your business trip photos. The one who's been liking your pictures for years." Marlene's jaw tightened, and I saw the moment she decided on her next move. "You're being paranoid." The gaslighting. The dismissal. The way she looked at me like I was the one ruining the night. I let out a slow breath, clenching my jaw. "Give me your phone." She crossed her arms. "No." No hesitation this time. No laughter, no playful deflection. Just outright refusal. I nodded, stepping back. That's all I needed to know. And without another word, I walked past her, through the door, and back inside. Marlene followed after me, her tone shifting from dismissive to frustrated. "Elliot, stop it. You're acting crazy." But I wasn't listening anymore. I went straight to our bedroom, my mind racing. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to let her turn this around on me. No, I was going to end this. Because in 30 seconds, everything had changed. And now, I was done. I stood in our bedroom, my hands gripping the edges of the dresser, staring at my own reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at me was someone I barely recognized. There was something hollow in his eyes, something heavy in the way his shoulders slumped. I had always been a man who believed in hard work, in trust, in the kind of love that could endure anything. But now? Now I was a man staring at the wreckage of 3 decades, trying to understand how I had been so blind. Behind me, Marlene lingered in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. I could hear the subtle shift in her breathing, the way she was carefully deciding her next words. She had always been good with words, too good. But tonight, they weren't going to work on me. "Are you seriously going to do this?" she asked, her voice laced with irritation rather than remorse. "Elliot, you're blowing this out of proportion." I let out a slow breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "Out of proportion?" I turned around, leaning against the dresser. "I asked you for your phone, and you refused. That's not normal, Marlene. Not for a husband and wife who trust each other." Her eyes narrowed. "So now I have to hand over my phone like a criminal? That's not trust, that's control." Control. She really thought she could flip this on me. That was the moment I knew, without a doubt, that she had been lying for a long time. I shook my head, a humorless chuckle escaping me. "You really don't get it, do you?" Marlene sighed, rubbing her temple. "You're exhausting me, Elliot. I've had a long day, and I don't have the energy for this." She moved toward the bed, sitting on the edge and kicking off her shoes, as if this was just another minor inconvenience. That was what infuriated me the most. The sheer casualness of it all. The way she acted like my world wasn't crashing down around me. I crossed my arms. "How long?" She glanced up. "How long what?" I swallowed hard. "How long have you been seeing him?" For a split second, her mask slipped. Just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. The flicker of guilt, the way she quickly composed herself, the way she shifted her gaze just slightly to the side instead of looking me in the eye. "I'm not having this conversation," she muttered, standing up. I stepped in front of her before she could leave the room. You don't get to walk away from this, I said, my voice firm but controlled. Not after everything we've built. Not after 30 years. You owe me the truth. Marlene scoffed, shaking her head. You're being dramatic. That word again. Dramatic. I clenched my jaw, my hands curling into fists at my sides. Stop saying that. She rolled her eyes. What do you want me to say, Elliot? That I've been unhappy for years? That I needed something different? My stomach dropped. That was it. That was the truth slipping out in a single careless admission. I took a step back, exhaling sharply. So, you admit it. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, arms crossed, as if debating whether it was worth the effort to lie anymore. Finally, she let out a tired sigh. Look, Elliot. Things haven't been the same between us for a long time. And yes, I've been seeing someone. I stared at her, waiting for the wave of devastation to hit. But it didn't. Not the way I expected. Instead, a strange sense of clarity settled over me. The weight I had been carrying in my chest for days, maybe even years, lifted, just a little. I nodded slowly. Right. And instead of talking to me, instead of working through it, you decided to sneak around behind my back. She let out a bitter laugh. Like you would have listened? We've been stuck in the same routine for years, Elliot. You never noticed how distant we'd become. I needed something more. There it was. The same selfish justification I had heard from other men who had been in my position. The same tired excuse that people use when they don't have the courage to fix what's broken. I felt an odd sense of calm settle over me. This was it. The moment I finally saw her for who she truly was. Not the woman I had married, not the partner I had once trusted with everything. Just a person who made a choice that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with her own weaknesses. I turned toward the closet, grabbing a duffel bag from the top shelf. Marlene frowned. What are you doing? I started packing. Clothes. Shoes. The essentials. Moving with a purpose, without hesitation. For the first time in a long time, I felt completely in control of my own life. Marlene took a step forward. Elliot, come on. Let's talk about this. I didn't look at her. There's nothing left to talk about. For the first time that night, I heard something new in her voice, panic. You're really just going to leave? She asked, her voice a little higher, a little less sure. I zipped up the bag, slinging it over my shoulder before finally meeting her gaze. Yeah, I said simply. I am. And as I walked out of that bedroom, out of the house I had worked so hard to build, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. 30 years together. 30 seconds to end it. The house was behind me, but my thoughts weren't. As I drove aimlessly through the night, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, I kept replaying it all. Every word, every glance, every lie. The way Marlene had looked at me, not with guilt, not with remorse, but with frustration. Like I was an inconvenience. Like I was the problem. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, to punch the dashboard, to let out the years of bottled-up frustration that had been simmering beneath the surface. But all I felt was numb. The glow of the dashboard clock read 11:42 p.m. Almost midnight, and I had nowhere to go. I could call someone, sure, my brother, maybe an old friend, but what would I say? Hey, mind if I crash at your place? My wife of 30 years just admitted she's been seeing someone else. The words felt foreign, unreal. So I just kept driving. Past familiar streets, past the gas station where I used to grab coffee before work, past the park where Marlene and I had taken our kids when they were little. Every turn brought another memory, another reminder that my life had been built around a woman who had quietly checked out of our marriage long before I ever noticed. I pulled into an empty parking lot outside an old diner, the neon open 24 hours sign buzzing faintly in the quiet. The place was mostly deserted, save for a trucker sipping coffee at the counter and a waitress wiping down tables. I sat in my car for a moment, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I looked different. Or maybe I was just seeing myself clearly for the first time in years. With a sigh, I stepped out, the cold night air wrapping around me as I pushed open the door to the diner. A bell jingled overhead. The waitress, a woman in her late 50s with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Rita, glanced up from her rack. Take any seat you want, hon, she said, offering a polite but distant smile. I slid into a booth by the window, staring at the laminated menu without actually reading it. A minute later, Rita appeared with a notepad in hand. What can I get you? I hesitated. I wasn't hungry. My stomach was twisted in knots, my mind a whirlwind of emotions I couldn't pin down. But I needed something to keep me anchored. Just coffee, I said finally. She nodded, disappearing behind the counter. I drummed my fingers on the tabletop, my leg bouncing restlessly. It was too quiet in here, too still. My thoughts had room to breathe, and I didn't want them to. A few minutes later, a steaming cup of coffee slid in front of me. Rita lingered, eyeing me with the kind of knowing look only people who had seen too much life could give. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. I huffed a short laugh. "That obvious?" She shrugged, leaning on the counter. "I've worked the night shift for 20 years. I can tell when a man's carrying something heavy." I stared into my coffee, the dark liquid swirling as I absent-mindedly stirred it. "Yeah," I muttered. "It's been a long night." She didn't push, didn't ask for details. Just nodded like she understood, then walked off to tend to the trucker at the counter. I took a slow sip of coffee, the bitter warmth settling uneasily in my stomach. I had no plan, no roadmap for what came next. I had spent 3 decades being someone's husband, someone's provider, someone's everything. Now, I was sitting alone in a diner at midnight, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do with the rest of my life. A vibration in my pocket snapped me out of my thoughts. My phone. I pulled it out, my heart lurching when I saw the name on the screen. Marlene. For a moment, I just stared at it, watching as the call rang on. My thumb hovered over the decline button. What could she possibly have to say now? Apologies? Excuses? Maybe even more gaslighting, some desperate attempt to make this all seem like a misunderstanding. I let the call ring out. A second later, a text popped up. "Marlene, we need to talk. Please don't do this." Don't do what? Leave? Stand up for myself? Finally see the truth? I locked my phone and set it face down on the table, exhaling slowly. Rita returned, topping off my coffee without a word. She glanced at my phone, then back at me. "She the reason you look like a man who just lost a fight with a freight train?" I chuckled, shaking my head. "Something like that." She slid a sugar packet across the table. "You want my advice?" I raised an eyebrow. "Do I?" She smirked. "Probably not. But I'll give it anyway." She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "Whatever it is she did, whatever she's trying to fix now, it ain't about you. It's about her. You can waste years trying to figure out why people do what they do, but at the end of the day, some folks just ain't who you thought they were." I let her words settle, rolling them over in my mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe I would never understand why Marlene had done this. But did I really need to understand? Or did I just need to let go? I took another sip of coffee, staring out the diner window at the empty road ahead. Maybe for the first time in a long time, I was finally ready to see where it led. The coffee had gone cold, but I was still sitting there, staring at the worn surface of the diner table like it held all the answers I needed. My mind was running in circles, replaying the last few hours like a broken record. Marlene's voice still echoed in my head. "You're being dramatic. You're blowing this out of proportion." I didn't mean for it to happen. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. The worst part wasn't even the betrayal itself. It was the way she had said it, the way she looked at me with more irritation than regret, like I was some inconvenience disrupting her carefully crafted world. 30 years. 30 years. You don't just walk away from that without feeling like a piece of you has been ripped out. But I had walked away. I had walked out that door, thrown a bag in my car, and driven off into the night with no real plan, no destination, just a feeling in my gut that I couldn't stay there a second longer. Now, I was here, in a rundown diner, nursing a cup of coffee I wasn't drinking, surrounded by strangers who didn't know or care that my entire life had just fallen apart. The bell over the door jingled. Another lost soul wandered in, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and a weathered face. He gave me a quick nod as he passed, like he somehow recognized the look in my eyes. Maybe he did. Maybe men like us could see the wreckage in each other. "You gonna sit here all night? Are you figuring things out?" Rita, the waitress, leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I let out a dry chuckle. I don't even know what figuring things out means anymore. She smirked. "Yeah, most men don't until it's too late." Her eyes flicked to my phone, which was still face down on the table. "You gonna call her back?" I stared at it. "We need to talk. Please don't do this." "What's the point?" I muttered. "The point is whether you want closure or not." Closure. I didn't even know if that word meant anything anymore. What kind of closure was there to get? She had made her choice. I had made mine. But still, something inside me ached for one last conversation. I hesitated for a long moment before finally picking up the phone. I tapped the call button. It rang twice before she answered. "Elliot." Her voice was soft, almost relieved. I said nothing. I didn't think you'd call, she admitted after a moment. Neither did I. A pause. Where are you? I ignored the question. You said we need to talk. So talk. Marlene sighed. I don't want things to end like this. I let out a humorless laugh. How exactly did you think things were going to end? She hesitated. I never wanted to hurt you. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. You didn't just hurt me. You shattered everything. Another long silence. Then, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. I didn't mean for it to happen. I shut my eyes. You didn't mean for it to happen? I repeated, my voice sharp. You mean you just tripped and fell into another man's arms? Elliot. No, I cut her off. No more lies. No more half-truths. Tell me the real reason you did it. She didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Because I felt invisible. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I swallowed, forcing myself to stay composed. Invisible. Marlene sighed. We became roommates, Elliot. We stopped seeing each other. We stopped talking. I don't know when it happened, but one day, I woke up and realized that I wasn't me anymore. I was just someone's wife, someone's mother. And then Daniel, she trailed off, as if saying his name out loud made it all more real. He made me feel like I existed again. I clenched my jaw. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to tell her that I had felt invisible too, but I never sought out someone else to remind me I was still breathing. I never betrayed the vows we made. You should have told me, I said finally. If you were unhappy, if you felt like you were losing yourself, you should have told me. We could have fixed it. Her breath hitched. But I didn't want to hear it anymore. I hung up. And just like that, 30 years of my life ended with the press of a button. I stared at the phone in my hand long after I had ended the call. The screen went dark, my reflection staring back at me, tired, hollow-eyed, unrecognizable. It was strange how a simple tap of a finger could feel heavier than anything I had ever done. A waitress passed by with a tray of food for another customer, and the smell of sizzling bacon and fresh toast filled the air. My stomach churned. I hadn't eaten since lunch, but food was the last thing on my mind. Instead, I reached for my coffee, realizing too late that it had gone cold. Refill. I glanced up to see Rita standing over me, the coffee pot in her hand. She studied me for a moment, like she could see every crack in my foundation. I nodded. Yeah, thanks. She poured the dark liquid into my cup, then leaned on the counter. So, how'd it go? I huffed a humorless laugh. I hung up on her. Rita raised an eyebrow. That bad, huh? She gave me the usual excuses. Said she felt invisible, that she lost herself in the marriage, that it just happened. I shook my head. Like that makes it any better. The waitress sighed, sliding into the booth across from me. Let me guess, she made herself the victim? I let out a slow breath. She didn't have to say it outright. It was in the way she talked. Like I was supposed to understand why she did it. Like I was supposed to feel bad that I wasn't giving her what she needed. Rita snorted. Classic. I stared at my coffee, my fingers wrapped around the cup. What's funny is that I get it. I really do. Marriages change. People change. Maybe we did become distant. Maybe we did stop trying. But you don't fix that by lying. You don't fix it by going behind someone's back. Rita tapped her nails on the table thoughtfully. You ever wonder if she was waiting for you to figure it out? I frowned. What do you mean? She shrugged. Some people don't have the guts to leave. They don't want to be the bad guy, so they do something that forces the other person to make the decision for them. I exhaled sharply, considering her words. Was that what Marlene had done? Had she been waiting for me to catch on? To force the confrontation she was too much of a coward to have herself? It made too much sense. I wasted 30 years, I muttered. No, you didn't, Rita said firmly. You loved someone the best way you knew how. That's never a waste. I let her words sink in, feeling a strange mix of relief and sadness settle in my chest. I had spent my entire life thinking that love was about commitment, about staying even when things got tough. But what was the point of holding on when the other person had already let go? The bell over the door jingled again, and I glanced up instinctively. For a split second, my stomach dropped. Marlene. She stood in the doorway, scanning the diner, her eyes landing on me almost immediately. She hesitated, as if debating whether to approach, but then squared her shoulders and walked forward with purpose. I clenched my jaw, my hands balling into fists under the table. I wasn't ready for this. Not yet. Rita noticed my expression and turned her head slightly, her eyes narrowing as she saw Marlene approaching. You want me to handle this? She murmured. I almost said yes. Almost let the tough waitress with a no-nonsense attitude send my wife packing. But this was my fight. No, I muttered. I've got it. Marlene slid into the booth across from me without waiting for an invitation. She looked tired, her hair slightly disheveled like she had been running her fingers through it over and over again. She smelled like the perfume I had bought her for our anniversary last year. I had a feeling you'd be here, she said quietly. I didn't answer. I just took a slow sip of my coffee, waiting. She sighed. Elliot, I held up a hand. Before you say whatever it is you came here to say, I want to ask you something. She nodded hesitantly. I stared at her, forcing her to hold my gaze. Were you ever going to tell me? She swallowed, glancing down at the table. Her hands twisted together in her lap. I don't know, she admitted. I let out a bitter laugh. That's what I thought. She looked up, her eyes glassy. Elliot, I never wanted to lose you. I never wanted it to be like this. I shook my head. You lost me the second you decided to betray me. A tear slipped down her cheek, but for the first time, I didn't feel guilty about it. I didn't feel the urge to reach out, to comfort her, to fix it, because it wasn't mine to fix anymore. Marlene sniffled, swiping at her face. What happens now? I leaned back in my seat, exhaling slowly. The answer was so clear now. Now, I said, voice calm, steady. Now I move on. And for the first time since I walked out of that house, I truly meant it. Marlene shifted uncomfortably in the booth, her eyes scanning my face like she was searching for something. Maybe a hint of the man who used to love her unconditionally, the man who would have fought for her no matter what. But that man was gone. She had killed him the moment she chose someone else. She exhaled slowly, hands clasped in front of her on the table. Elliot, I don't know how to make this right. I huffed a laugh, shaking my head. That's because you can't. Her lower lip trembled, but I didn't feel sorry for her. Not anymore. The woman sitting across from me wasn't my wife, at least, not in the way that mattered. She was a stranger wearing my wife's face. She licked her lips, eyes darting away as she spoke. I don't want to throw everything away. 30 years, Elliot. Doesn't that mean something? My fingers curled around my coffee cup, the ceramic warm against my skin. It meant something to me. But clearly, it didn't mean enough to you. She flinched at my words, but I wasn't going to cushion the truth. Not after everything. She took a slow, shaky breath. I don't know how we got here. That was what got me. The sheer audacity of it. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on the table. You don't know how we got here? My voice was calm, but there was an edge to it now, something sharp and cutting. Marlene, let me remind you. You lied. You cheated. You betrayed me. That's how we got here. She swallowed, blinking rapidly. I was lost, Elliot. I made a mistake. A mistake. Like this was just some careless accident. A bad decision she could sweep under the rug. I ran a hand down my face, suddenly exhausted. No, a mistake is leaving the oven on. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a choice. And every time you snuck around, every time you texted him, every time you walked into our house and pretended everything was fine, you made that choice again and again. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time, she looked scared. I took a deep breath. Why did you follow me here? She wiped at her face, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I don't want to lose you. I stared at her for a long moment, waiting for the words to mean something. But they didn't. I shook my head. You already did. Her breath hitched, and for the first time that night, I saw it hit her. The reality of what she had done, of what she had destroyed. Maybe she had convinced herself that I would fight for her, that I would beg for her to stay, to let me fix this. But I wasn't that man anymore. I wasn't her man anymore. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. 30 years. It had been on my finger for so long it felt like a part of me. But as I stared at it now, it felt foreign, like an artifact from a life that no longer belonged to me. I set it on the table between us. Marlene's eyes widened. Elliot, this is goodbye. My voice was steady, firm. I wouldn't let her manipulate me. Not again. A tear slipped down her cheek. Please don't do this. I stood up, grabbing my coat. You already did. And with that, I walked away, leaving her sitting there, alone, staring at the ring between us. I didn't look back, because some things aren't worth saving. I stepped out of the diner, the cold night air hitting my face like a long overdue wake-up call. The door swung shut behind me with a quiet ding, the sound feeling final, like the closing of a chapter one should have ended a long time ago. For the first time in hours, I took a deep breath. A real one. One that didn't feel heavy, like I was drowning under the weight of what could have been. I had spent my entire adult life being Marlene's husband. For 30 years, my identity had been wrapped around that title, that commitment, that illusion. But now, I was just Elliot. And for the first time, that didn't scare me. I walked toward my car, feeling lighter with every step. No anger, no heartbreak, just clarity. I didn't need to understand why she did it anymore. I didn't need to pick apart every moment of our marriage to find where it had all gone wrong. She made a choice, and I made mine. As I opened the car door, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Another message from Marlene? I wouldn't have been surprised. But when I pulled it out, I saw a different name on the screen. Daniel, my brother. I stared at the name for a second before answering. Elliot. Daniel's voice came through, filled with concern. I've been trying to call you. Are you okay? I let out a breath. The old me would have said yes just to avoid the conversation, just to pretend everything was fine. But I was done with pretending. No, I admitted. But I think I will be. Daniel was silent for a moment before letting out a small chuckle. That's the most honest thing you've said in years. I smirked. Yeah, well, better late than never. He hesitated. Listen, I know things have been rough, but why don't you come stay with me for a while? Clear your head, get away from all of it. We'll watch some terrible movies, drink too much beer, and talk about anything but her. For the first time all night, I smiled. That sounds perfect. I slid into the driver's seat, starting the engine. The headlights illuminated the road ahead, a road I never thought I'd have to take alone. But as I pulled out of the parking lot, I realized something important. I wasn't lost. I was finally free. Marlene had been my past. But my future? That was mine to build. And for the first time in a long time, I was looking forward to it.